dive in, understanding what's beneath behavior, first of all, and knowing, like what we understand now, is that all behavior is biology. And this is something that we have to take into our schools, understanding that, a behavior is so much more than we knew a decade ago. I think we intuited it, in some ways, but it really is when our physiology is shifting and we are moving into sometimes survival states, sometimes nervous system states of settledness or groundedness or steadiness. And those states are changing all day long. And that is a good thing. Our nervous system is dynamic. What becomes very challenging is when we get stuck and when our students get stuck, when our own children get stuck. I think, as caregivers, as parents, no matter how old our children are, when I can remember times when, one of mine was just feeling so much anxiety for several weeks, or months. And it just tears, it just breaks you open as a mama. So just knowing that and I want to say today that we have this amazing nervous system that has so much plasticity and it is built to wobble. It is not built to break. And this is something that I want our teachers to know. I want our administrators to know. I want parents and caregivers to know that oftentimes, if we're not reaching beneath the behavior, then we are band-aiding, you know, some type of a wound that might need stitches. And so that's the exciting part of this work. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up my PowerPoint for today. So let me share here. And we are such a small, intimate group that I would more than ever love questions from you. So, I'll speak this first half. We'll take a few minutes to break. But please put your questions in the chat so that maybe at the break and at the end, I can address those as well. That's what I love when we're small. I like it when we're big too, but it just makes it a little more personal. So we will look at taking that deep dive. And for those of you who were with me, this will be a little bit of review, but they say it takes 6 times to stick. Just reminding everyone that this is a framework. It's not a program, and it's built from these 4 beautiful pillars that really are about us personally as much as it is professionally. If I had integrated and embodied these pillars as a young mom, as a young teacher, it would have been, I don't know, the struggles and the challenges and the deeper understanding would have felt just so co-regulating for me and for the children and youth that I serve. So the very first one is about us. Behavior management is about adults, and we're not really taught that. We are the ones that really go first. And our kids are watching us. And it takes a steady adult to steady a child. Co-regulation is the second pillar. And this is really at the heart of all my books that I've written and articles. And it is our biological priority because we're social creatures. We can't survive without each other. And when we are able to find steadiness in our own nervous systems, then we're able to share that safe space with a child who needs to borrow a little. Touch points are these little moments that happen all day long, all the time. And they matter because it's the way we look at a child. It's the way it's our tone. It's the way we're posturing and gesturing. And we can unintentionally escalate everybody around us, which I've done more times than I would want to admit. Or we have this beautiful ability to co-regulate because we as human beings are contagious. Our emotions are contagious and stress is contagious. And we know that through looking at studies that really are measuring how cortisol leaks from our skin, and which is a stress hormone. And even in close proximity, um, this could be a negative touch point. I know this is, we've all felt it, like when in your own homes, when everybody is dysregulated, you pick up on each other's, vibe. You pick up on each other's energy. The fourth pillar is when the leaves are turning, it's really a new season. And this is the language of the nervous system. And it is moving away from always talking about behavior and really understanding that when we understand deeply that the nervous system has its own language, and we teach our children this. In fact, our little ones already know it, but they love that we are learning with them. And the language of the nervous system is sensation. So I spoke a lot about that in August. And sensation, you can think of sensation as physical feelings, in coming from the body, like hot or numb or icy or open, flowing, bubbly, glittery. These are some of the ones that the kids come up with too that I love. Tight, flowing. So teary. Those are all those descriptors that I've just named are sensations. And they are much, much more accurate than talking about feelings all the time. I love this quote, and I'm going to share it again today because I just think we all need to be reminded that a student's behavior isn't about me. My own child's behavior isn't about me. They're not doing this to me. It's a symptom, like a sneeze showing us a cold, a cut with a wound, or a scab showing us healing. This behavior is signaling that the nervous system is rough. Can we become curious? And, thinking about wondering what is beneath that behavior. And then a question that was asked to me when our oldest son was really struggling in his adolescent years by his freshman Spanish teacher. And Brandon Pickett said to me in an email, Dr. Desautels, please let me know how I may serve you in the days and weeks to come. And the title of my first book is How May I Serve You? So behavior is only a signal, and it's a symptom that's showing us there is dysregulation in our nervous system. And it really, once we are attuned to that, we're not asking teachers to be therapists. That's not what this is all about. But it's just really understanding that when we begin to look at patterns and trends, and we begin to really think about, like, is it about feeling like too much too fast? Does this happen at recess? Does this happen in the lunchroom? Does it happen in transitions in the hallway? Is it happening on Tuesday nights? We can begin to kind of peel back the layers. And we have so many resources on our website that speak to that as well. Behavior, we are no different than our kids. I mean, this has been me as a mom and, as an educator. Again, we were no different, other than we do have a developed prefrontal cortex. And so we have the ability to really question and get curious and wonder and step back and pause. Pausing is huge. I love this quote from Resmaa Menakem. I shared this as well in August. But the greatest intervention that an administrator can give his or her staff, that a teacher can give their students, that we as parents can give our children, is to do our own work. And we're going to talk a lot about that in my next session, my final session, when we address multi-tiered systems of support for adults. So when we look at these couple of questions here. Maybe, I'm just going to say me, maybe when I'm activated by others, this activation might be pointing out my limiting beliefs about myself and the world that's being reflected back to me. Because this is so true. If I'm hypercritical with myself, I'm more than likely I'm hypercritical with the world. Or maybe when I'm activated, this is a catalyst for me to grow, and to really think about what's happening, which I'd never questioned. So we need to do our own breathing and our own movement. Those deep breaths. I mean, they just, they just change our biology. And oftentimes our adult bodies still carry the stories of our childhood nervous systems. And that is subconscious. That's below consciousness. And so, how do I know that? I get triggered by something that I think, what in the world? Why would this trigger me? Why does it trigger me when I feel disrespected by the student? They're not looking at me when I'm speaking to them, or they're talking over me. And I'm giving you a real life example for me. This is a trigger and an activator for me. And I know it comes from the way I was brought up and my own dad. And so I've done this work. And and I'm learning that just because a student isn't looking at me does not mean they're not listening or they're not engaged. It can be very disrespectful to ask a student to look at you, based on culture, based on neurodivergence, based on, just emotional development. So I really, this is so powerful. This is so true. And the greatest takeaway from today is awareness. And it's not just conceptual awareness. Like right now, I am aware that I'm sitting at a desk. I'm in my daughter's home. I'm aware that it's raining. I'm aware that there are mountains back there, but I can't see them because of the heavy low clouds. I'm aware that I have a black shirt on. That's conceptual awareness. But embodied awareness is what we're talking about. Embodied awareness is when I'm aware that my mouth is dry. I'm aware that my heart is racing. I'm aware that my hands feel clammy, or that I feel tension in my neck. I'm aware that when I walk into my classroom, I can feel a headache coming on, or I can feel my stomach kind of moving in all kinds of directions. That is when we begin to listen to our nervous systems. And the reason why this is so important is because we can get out in front of our own behaviors. And the way we speak to ourselves and the way we're using imagination can be the workshop where we can create, what's going to happen in an hour, or this afternoon, or tonight, or tomorrow. We can anticipate and be prepared by creating an intention and a plan of action. And I love this last bullet. Your body hears everything that your mind says. Our bodies hold on to everything, even when we forget. And that's why so many seminal pieces of literature and textbooks have titles similar to Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score. And it's true for our children. They hold on in their bodies. What maybe they don't remember. If they were bullied on the playground, they may not remember the details of that. But when tomorrow comes and recess approaches, they begin to feel tense and tight and get teary, and they begin to go to the nurse's office. So I want to check in with you to make sure I'm making sense. So does that feel clear? And I think we can all just recall moments, either in our own nervous systems or those with the children and youth, our own babies, our own students, where, we've picked up on their dysregulation, or our dysregulation, and we've not just thought about it, we've actually felt it in the body. So what I'd love for you to do right now is in the chat, maybe just share a place in your nervous system that you absolutely know you hold the past. Like we all have that. Sometimes sometimes we don't have the awareness of it, but I want you to take this moment and think about, do you have, when you're stressed, does your stomach, do you have digestive issues? When you're feeling dysregulated, does your heart just flop around? Like it scares the hell out of you. You could just feel it beating, or it skips a beat. Or I break out. Like my skin is a big indicator. Like when I am overwhelmed, I mean, my God, like I have acne like a 16-year-old. It's ridiculous. So just thinking about like where do we feel it? So just, maybe in your shoulders, maybe in your neck. Mona, you just said stiff, sore neck, and yeah, we can feel it. Maybe sometimes our heads feel like real heavy. Um, but it's just really important. Awareness moves us from states of protection into states of growth. And it's true for our children. And this is something we can share in a morning meeting. We can share with our own kids before bedtime. It can be a part of our ritual or in the mornings. We can do a nervous system check-in. When we can empty out, and since I've been with you all in August, I've been saying to teachers, give your kids an opportunity to dump. We all need to dump before we start to learn. If we don't dump, then we are distracted and we cannot test well. We don't learn well. If I'm coming into a class and I'm given DMR right away, daily morning, what is it, daily morning math or daily math review, DMR, then like that is just horrible because I can't focus. So I want to be heard and seen and felt. So your procedures are everything. Your procedures those procedures are where this framework comes to life as a mom and as an educator. We're not adding to your plate. I mean, like literally that, you have procedures. Even if you're a social worker, counselor, therapist, school psychologist, if you're an OT, if you're a I mean, I don't care what your role is with kids. Before you meet with them in a small group or one-on-one, and it's true for our principals. If I'm an administrator, I want my staff to dump. I want to give them some time and some space, even if it's 5 or 6 minutes, even if it's a quick Google Doc nervous system check-in. And I'll show you some examples of those. And my website is filled with, I mean, it could be overwhelming to your nervous system. I said that when I was with you in August, we keep adding to it. So, does anybody have any, I'll look in the chat. Does anyone have any questions? I just kind of wanted to see.
Dr. Lori, I have a question. It's Mona. If we wanted to
Yeah.
do, you're so right on and love it. If we wanted to do our own reading on awareness to dig a little deeper into that, do you have any articles or books or things that you might recommend that are kind of things you like that are go-tos? I mean, you of course are sharing your wisdom with us, but I just think about the power of what you're saying and the need to dig deeper into that.
So we are bringing forth, and it's a document, and I can actually, just because I've worked with all of you, I can copy and paste the section on awareness. But this is coming, and I'll show it to you. I'll share it with you in just a moment. Um, but this is where the next session, I'll really dive into this. So this is well researched in neuroscience by Dr. Jim Doty, who just passed away in July. I think I mentioned that when I was there. He's a neurosurgeon who's really moved in. He really understands from the medical perspective how important the neuroscience of whole body understanding is. So Jim Doty's research, Dr. Tara Swart from the UK is doing a lot. She's got great podcasts. Um, oh my gosh, my mind is going blank, but there are just so many amazing. This is building the bridge. I'm going to show you this practice right now. But go ahead and put in the chat if you can share where you're experiencing it. Tense shoulders, my stomach, yep, tightness, racing heart, acne breakout. Oh boy, I hear you. Clenching. Oh yeah, shoulders and hands. Also, some people have TMJ. Like our son, like he will say he goes, Mom, I could just feel. I mean, he's 32 now, but He says, I can feel like when like when I wake up in the morning, my jaw's kind of locked. Sore throat, yeah. So I'm going to show this to you. This is why I like when we're small because then I can, let me go to my drive here. And if I can't find it quickly, then I'll do it when we take a little break. Let me go to recent. Oh, I found it. Amazing. Okay, this is really cool. So you guys are seeing something in progress. So these are the practices for us as we move up the ladder of awareness and plasticity. So I've lost so when you look at this awareness, it's really a fundamental aspect of mental experience with which we can begin to create and cultivate new experiences, create new perceptions and feelings and processes. Awareness is a process. Then I talk about what I just shared, conceptual and embodied. I love this from Dan Siegel. He's another one. Through his work in interpersonal neurobiology, he writes, from a relational point of view, awareness permits people to transform the way interactions are unfolding, as new modes of sharing energy and information can be introduced to alter old ingrained patterns. So we now know that the brain has great plasticity and can change and adapt and transform. But if we're not holding awareness, it cannot. It is molded by experience, repetition, and intention. And now we can see the brain's ability to transform on a cellular, genetic, and even molecular level. So, and then these are some of the resources that, oh gosh, we might have to look at this Joe Dispenza one. It's our favorite. I think Laura, we shared it in your cohort. But these are some, that just really share like what's happening with awareness. This is a piece on trauma and self-awareness, energy lying in wait. Um, and then these are practices. We're calling embodied awareness nutrient rich awareness, and it's a mental discipline. And and it's just interesting. These exercises is called my state of consciousness, which is your nervous system state. How many of us walk around and say, I'm tired a lot? Or we say, I'm frustrated a lot, or I'm annoyed. I mean, really, our I ams repeated with practice really become our realities. So this is a practice that we talk about. Living in the end is something that I talked about in that slide where we get out in front of our own behaviors. We're doing this in our class right now, Law of Revision, where we are taking a part of the day that didn't go well and we are revising it before we go to sleep at night. Because the greatest time of plasticity in the lower brain regions is in that state between sleep and wakefulness. So you can see there is a lot coming. And then we move into focus, which is all about awareness. Um, yeah, so I'm excited about this part of it. And so I will look at some things. Also, chapter one of Body and Brain Brilliance, the manual that you have, is all about the adult nervous system. And for you guys have it. And so we're using the PDF of chapter one to as a part of pre-reading for this ladder of plasticity and awareness. So that would be great reading before our next session, maybe. Anybody else have any questions? I'm just looking to see. I thank you guys for sharing, picking at my hands, fidgeting. My daughter, Sarah, my middle daughter, Sarah, she picks at her skin when she's nervous. She's a skin picker, and that's something that she's, aware of now, and she's not embarrassed about it like she used to be. She knows there's a reason for it. So, it's just so powerful when we understand, our default mode network. It's like That's something that we've done and we go to, and unless we have awareness, it can't change. So, yeah, so that's really powerful. Thank
Dr.
you all so
Lori,
much. Yeah,
hi, may I ask a question too?
absolutely.
In talking about like embodiment awareness, there's that one of the last bullets on your last slide was our body hears everything our mind says. I also think about like even just messages and what I say to myself and positive
Wow.
affirmations, right? Like how many times am I catching myself putting myself down or being critical or putting someone else down? And then also just trying to think about what messages I can say if my body is always listening. Is that part of this as well?
It is absolutely. And so we have actually a graph where we're having, when we delve into this MTSS for adults, that adults track your self-talk. We track our inner communication because it really matters. I mean, what you're saying to yourself, and I want to say, I did this with my graduate students over the summer, and it is shocking how negative, and I'm generalizing, but most of us speak super negatively to ourselves, or we're speaking negatively about others. And not that we would ever say that to them, but there is that part of us that holds that negative bias, and it comes out in the way we speak. So our bodies do hold on to that. And Patricia, that's a great question because it's not just, um, it's not just the external things that happen that create our I am, it's also from our internal world as well. And then we get more of it. And that's about momentum. And there's a lot of growing research with momentum that is new, that, you hold thoughts for a period of time, and those thoughts practiced become your beliefs. And those beliefs that are practiced become kind of your personality. And it's or identity. Yeah, it's so fascinating.
Thank
And
you.
here's the other thing too that's really interesting is that if we are not aware and if we are not intentional, um, what happens is we all have a survival drive, and it's kind of been our default mode over the years. And all of us have one. Like maybe you went through some significant adversity as a child, and your go-to survival drive was to run. So today you run from responsibility, you run away from chaos, you run away from, anything that feels overwhelming to you. And you could run away physically, but you can also run away emotionally. So that is a survival drive, and that is something that is wonderful, but it may no longer serve you. And we need to say bye-bye to that survival drive. But that's hard to do because that brain stem does not change easily. It does not have the plasticity that the prefrontal cortex has. That was a really long answer to your question, but thank you. Anyone else? Um, okay, so I am going to go back to my slides and we'll keep going, but we'll have more time, so please share your questions. Um, this I shared too. I really kind of redefined co-regulation over the summer, and I want to read this to you. I look at co-regulation as children and youth are able to use a steady adult nervous system as an extension of themselves. And I think that is so much more accurate because I was really tired of the old definitions. So I'll continue. An emotionally attuned educator or caregiver also shapes the growth of the child's or youth's emotional systems. So if I can find some steadiness, I'm able to extend my steadiness or ease with a child or an adolescent who needs to borrow a little bit of that. And that's discipline. That doesn't look like discipline. Most of us think of discipline in reactionary ways. But when we get out in front of our own behaviors, then we can model that for our students. And we can use co-regulation as a discipline resource. I've never said it that way before, as really a discipline tool to really delve beneath the behavior and to share some calm so that that child is able to get to their cortex, to be able to reason, to be logical, to repair, to pause. So I think that's really powerful. Um, the evolution of the brain is very schematic. The brain doesn't work in regions or sections. The brainstem is our survival area. It developed first. It's ancient. It holds all of our autonomic functions and regulatory functions like sweating and shivering, our heart rate. That's why some of you wrote in the chat, when you get upset, when you have a thought, and then you have this feeling that sends a signal to the brain to start it cues danger, or it cues threat, or it cues unfamiliarity, and then your heart rate starts first. So it's all about survival and it's all about safety. And then in the midbrain region, the brain's built from the back to the front and from the inside out. And the limbic system is that's the emotional part of the brain, the connection. It's, where it develops early, it's the relational part of the brain. And then the cortex. And the newest part, the prefrontal cortex, we share this region with primates and apes, and it holds our executive functioning and reasoning. And I just have to say, when I just read this is the first time I've read this since Jane Goodall. Dr. Jane Goodall passed away last week. And she has been revolutionary in helping us to understand chimpanzees and how, and all animals. I mean, dogs are her favorite, but how, there is an emotional part in our animals that can co-regulate with us, and that our primates and apes share so much cortex with us. And she is the one that studied them for 60 years. We wouldn't have known this work without her. So I just want to give tribute to her today. It's the first time I've shared this since her passing. So in a very simplified way, when the cortex, the prefrontal cortex is activated, we can access reasoning and logic, and we can pause, and we have good, strong memory and attention. But when we feel threatened, or when we sense danger, or we feel something is unfamiliar, and it could be the look on someone's face, it could be the sound of someone's voice, these two almond-shaped clusters in the limbic area, the amygdala, begin to fire, and they begin what we know is a survival or stress response. And then we have a couple of different stress response systems that get activated to protect us. And oftentimes you have students that walk into your schools that live in here, that live with an activated amygdala. And we're not excusing behaviors, but we have to understand that when that amygdala is activated, the cortex goes offline, and they don't have the ability to pause, or the capability, or to remember, or to learn well, or to hold working memory. So this is critical. This is critical. And then it's not just about the brain, it's also about our bodies. And I actually have a new podcast. If anyone's interested, I put it on social media today. I did it with Polyvagal Institute, and it's one of my favorite podcasts because the host was so good. He was so knowledgeable, and he was able to ask me questions that were so critical. So take a listen to that. If you want to know more about the vagus nerve, it's our 10th cranial nerve pathway. It connects the brainstem to all the way down to our intestines, and it controls everything. I mean, our moods, our tone of voice, our breathing, our immune, all of like cardiovascular system, our immune system, our endocrine system. our heart rate, blood pressure, digestion, all of it. And even our facial, because it moves up, it controls like that vagus nerve, like connects to our ear muscles and the orbito eye muscles. So this, and our kids know this. My second grade students a few years ago learned all of this, and they think it's fascinating, and they are empowered, and they feel relieved. So this is really, I mean, it's very, very exciting. This is on my website, but I wanted you to have these slides today. Um, this is, so in each of these show the different nervous system states. And if you put your hand on your forehead, when you're in the green, that is when the vagus nerve has a break on it. It's toned, Toned. Like when a muscle is toned, you're in good shape. This vagus nerve is in good shape. It's toned, and we can get to the cortex. And in polyvagal theory and in applied educational neuroscience, we call this social engagement or safe and social. And so up at the top, up here, what we see are behaviors. And then at the bottom, these are the sensations and feelings that live beneath those behaviors. And then when we move into the amygdala, when our amygdala, those two almond-shaped clusters, that's the nervous system's smoke alarm. When it starts to fire, then these are the behaviors we might see: yelling, blaming, hitting, throwing, aggressive, demanding. And these are fight sensations and feelings. So underneath that fighting, that behavior, there's probably a lot of fear or alarm. We might sense hotness, or we're fast, pressured, anxious, rigid, squeezed. And then flight. So some of us are runners, some of us are procrastinators. We fly away from responsibility, or we physically move. And these, we might sense buzzing or restlessness or preoccupation. And then shutdown is a brainstem response. And that's where, when we can't run from our stress or fight off our stress, our body collapses. And I'm going to talk to you about that in the second half. But these are some of the feelings and sensations. We might experience numbness, kind of like emptiness, a void, folded, despair, hopeless, exhausted. So those are some of the feelings and sensations. And then we have blended states. And this is where we all really live. The blended states are, I'll go through. So play is a really wonderful blended state. It's when we're in our cortex, but we're also in fight flight. And so we're mobilizing energy for excitement, for playfulness. We might feel focused, but also jittery. Maybe it's how I feel before a vocal performance, or maybe it's my first day on a new job, or maybe I'm excited for my weekend plans. I felt this way yesterday as I was flying from Dallas to to Mexico City. I thought about, I was in play because I was tired, but then all of a sudden I was calm, I was focused, I was so excited to be with Reagan and Alexis. And so I was there. Um, and then another nice blended state is called stillness. And this is where we're focused, but we need to be left alone. How many of us need quiet? We just need, every day we need a few minutes to ourselves, or we don't do well. It can be with another. Sometimes it's just, watching a Netflix together, not talking, not moving. Maybe it's just sitting there cuddling. Maybe it's just working on a puzzle, or sitting with your cup of tea and just listening to music. So these are blended states that feel good to us. These are a couple of blended states where we move into survival states, and they feel sometimes awful to us. I'm going to get a sip of my water real quick. So this first one is called freeze. I'm going to speak to this more in the second half, but this is where we're mobilizing energy, like my heart is racing, but I can't move. Like I've had my daughter, Sarah, this was where she was in her first couple of years of teaching. She would come home. She was so stressed. So she like had so many kids fighting in the classroom every day. And she would just call me, FaceTime me, and she was just crying. And she couldn't get off the couch. I mean, literally, her heart was racing, but she just was like almost like she had a blanket around her, crying, and she couldn't move. Sometimes kids, when we call them out in a classroom, they will not move. They'll put their head down or they'll go under their desk or they look disrespectful. We call that manipulative or, intentional. But really, if you took their heart rate 120 beats per minute or higher, and they can't move. And that is called fight, flight with immobilized. It's a freeze state or tonic immobility. And then the last blended state, we've all been here. It's where appeasement is really a mixture of all the states. It's where we're focused enough to kind of plan not to be seen, but our heart is beating fast and we feel disconnected. So sometimes you don't want anything to do with the conflict. You want to disappear. You pull away, but you're kind of planning to do that. You don't want to be seen, so you hide in a crowd or you avert your eyes. You can even laugh in appeasement, just because you don't want attention on you, so you kind of go with the group. You can sense feeling pinched or stuck or squeezed or unauthentic and stuffy. You're kind of floating away. To identify these and for our students to understand these, our middle school students, when Crystal and I shared these at Belzer, our kids went crazy for these because it hit what they were like. It was like, oh my gosh, there's a reason I'm feeling this way, more than just the absolute states. So this is what I've just shared with you, that when you are in safe and social, when the vagus nerve is toned, you're accessing the cortex, you feel open and peaceful. This is the polyvagal graph. Your heart rate is low, your respiration is low, your blood pressure is low. Your immune system is working well. There's resistance to infection. It's rest and digest. But then you get triggered, that little liner activated, and you can move into fight or flight. Now, I'm going to say something, and I want you to hold on to this forever. Fight flight has been it has been pathologized. And I want to celebrate it with you all today because it is so healthy that we know how to run or fight when our nervous system needs to protect us. And I want our kids to know that. And there's a huge range of energy here. But also, that does not excuse behaviors. You can't punch somebody, when you feel unsafe or you feel threatened. But to understand why you threw your fist or you ran out of a room is where we start. Again, it's awareness. And then we begin to think about, oh, how can we, begin to get out in front of our own behaviors, like as students, as staff? How do we begin to identify what we need and let an adult know before we pop off? And then in the blue is a brainstem response, and that's shutdown. And that's when we literally collapse. That's where we move into um, we move into a nervous system state where we feel withdrawn, we feel numb, we feel blocked. I mean, look at the words here: helpless, isolated, and I'm going to talk about this in the second half as well. This is a polyvagal chart for students. This is on my website, and we can have students do this, like in a Google Doc if they want it to be private. Principals can use this one for adults, in our schools where they can come in privately and check in where they are throughout the day. But there's so many ways we can do this. I just shared a couple of examples, but there are so many practices. Laura, Mona, Patricia have them. They can share with you. Here is one in a classroom that the students and teacher made. I think this is a fourth grade classroom where the kids are cutting out pictures and words that describe where they are in their nervous system, and then they move it along. We actually created our own ANS. ANS stands for autonomic nervous system state. So this ANS, the kids used can oh my gosh, this is like and this is fun for adults. So the kids would share what color, meaning what nervous system state they were in, what they were feeling in their brains, what they were experiencing in their vagus nerve through creating their own, and we call the ANS, it's an acronym, capital A, capital N, capital S, ANS, our autonomic nervous system. And it helps them to understand that like we change every day and we can adapt and transform. Oops. So I'm going to stop. I don't even know what time. Oh, perfect. So questions. Um, there are so many ways that you can track nervous system states. So please, and I'll show you my website, but also check in with Laura and Mona and Patricia too, because there are so many resources that I shared that you can have access to when I was there in August as well. Anyone have any questions or connections or thoughts?
Okay, at the risk of talking too much, just thank you for calling out the patholo path pathologic.
Pathologizing that fight
Thank
flight.
you.
Yeah.
Pathologizing adaptation coping
Yeah.
strategies such as those. I like so many of us have spent big parts of our career, and there's value. I mean, our human nervous system and our bodies have been developed for us to react in ways to protect ourselves. And then, it's just so refreshing to be in a space where we're realizing we don't want to pathologize those things anymore. We want to celebrate the gift that they were to us to help us get through what we needed to while we were getting through it, but then also to realize how it has been challenging and limited us, or even in some instances been damaging to us. So we need to learn new ways, right? So thank you, thank you, thank you,
Absolutely.
thank you. Like three cheers. This is one of many reasons why you love you, but thank you for sharing that.
Oh, Mona. Well, and so thank you. And again, someone like some of you might be thinking, okay, well, Lori, that's great to have awareness, and I'm understanding this now, but now, how do like what do we do with this? And one of the practices that and I've got enough time before we will take a break because I have to have you in a relaxed state of alertness. No one can be talked at for 2 straight hours. So we will take 5 minutes. But anchor yourself. We talked about anchors. We've talked about who are the people that anchor you, the places that anchor you, and it's, in body and brain brilliance, the things that anchor you, in the moment anchors, and then anchors that you can use before school, after school. I'm reading Tara Swartz's work right now, and she's really, this is going to be a part of the MTSS for adults, but she is talking about the power of intuition. And she says, we all have intuition, and we don't make great decisions just with our heads. Most of our best decisions that we make in life also include our gut. And we are so cognitively focused in the Western part of the world, I believe, and research supports that, that sometimes we leave our heart brain out and we leave our tummy brain out. And we have such a strong gut brain. That's what that vagus nerve connects. It connects the skull brain to our heart brains to our belly brains. And so one of the things that she talks about, I wanted to read this to you. She was saying, okay, I'm going to read this. So just close your eyes if you can just like I'm reading you a story that I have to read this to you. She says, I believe that Vanderkolk's theory can be taken even further. Knowledge that we can access for the purpose of healing and intuitive guidance. Not only does our bodies, not only do our bodies hold trauma, our bodies hold wisdom. This, like, I have goosebumps on my knees even saying that to you. Um, she explains that the research on alternative approaches to trauma shows us that there are a number of forms of body psychology and other somatic therapies that can provide you with emotional release, healing, and intuitive insight in a way that is different than talking therapies and even journaling. She's saying journaling can help, but it's not getting to the deep. And so she talks about, I don't know if anyone has ever experienced craniosacral therapy. So you can actually do it right now. Like you can have you ever just taken a moment and just taken your fingertips and literally taking deep, deep breaths, going down like I'm literally, this feels so good. I'm moving down and back and just taking deep breaths and I move all the way down to where I can feel that where my brain stem is. And in that space, just where that, do you feel that indentation back here? Do you feel that in your neck? If you can massage that area, that actually creates a more oxygenated glucose blood flow to the brain and body. But there's a lot of professional craniosacral work that's being done. She also talks about the power of acupuncture. I don't know if anyone's ever gone through that or acupressure. And we teach our children about tapping. I tapped. Reagan, my daughter, my youngest daughter who I'm here with, we tapped right before this today. We did our body tapping. Reagan and I feel so much better. I think I'm presenting really well today for me. I mean that humbly because of tapping. I'm not kidding you. It like really helped refresh me. Um, so tapping, and I want to share these ways, these somatosensory ways. Give me 1 second. Um, okay, I think I passed it. Oh, I think it's here. Oh, yes, it's here. Hold on. The mindful sigh. Have you ever you can do this all day long. Do I have any sighers in the group? Does anyone sigh? This is so healthy. Any vocalization is so healthy. It recalibrates your nervous system. So it's like this. I don't know if you can hear it on Zoom, but I'm going to take a deep breath in. Oh, could you hear me? So it's just like out of your mouth. And it literally resets, singing, gargling. We've talked about the ways that you can, humming is one of the most wonderful things you can do. I am a huge hummer as well. And those are great vocalizations, splashing your face with cold water. Um, but these are some things. So she talks about we have 34, not, we don't have just five or six visual sensing and auditory. We have 34 at our disposal. Um, and she talks about ways that we can really tap into those through and this tones vagus nerve, tuning into your senses. So anyway, let me just give you a couple of these. If you go outside and take 3 deep breaths in nature, literally, if you are by plants, like taking our kids outside, if we can do that once in a while, is just so helpful. Um, there are movement. Um, I mean, there are just so many things that we can do that she talks about for us, for the adults. You can't lighting a scent, our olfactory, our sense of smell is so critical to our well-being. So she talks about burning incense. She's a neuroscientist and a psychiatrist. Lighting a scented candle. She goes, just go in your kitchen and zest a lemon and Put it in your hands and just smell it for a minute and take some deep breaths. Zesting a lemon is one of the healthiest things you can do. Savor your morning coffee. Use a pillow spray on your pillowcase. Super easy and just like unbelievable. And then enjoy cooking or baking. Just smell, open up that bottle of vanilla and smell it in your kitchen. Those are simple ways that you are recalibrating your nervous system beneath the behavior through your sensory systems. So, but much more to come. I literally was, I mean, we're going to add this into the new MTSS for adults as well. So, all right, well, let's go take like 5, 6 minutes, whatever you need, and stretch and move and take a couple of deep breaths and take care of yourself. And then we'll come back and do the second half. Is that good? Okay, see you in a minute. So we'll take about one more minute and then we'll make sure everyone has had time to break. I would love to hear more about the practice to apply gentle touch on certain parts of the body because that just feels referred to as holds that promote self-regulation. Um, yeah, I would love to learn more about that. Is there a link like to
There's a website, and then there's also a book. I took a class. It was a psychology course that covered alternative medicine and alternative healing methods. So we did like
yeah.
uh Dinacharya charts, and we did Shinjin Jitsu,
Mm.
and it was a very good class, but I really found myself gravitating towards Jinshin Jitsu, and it stems
Oh,
from Buddhism. I will pull up a link.
that would be amazing.
Yeah, a go-to for me, and it's really cool because you can feel it immediately. Is like you take your like there'll be a graph and it will show which each finger like holds, or the I guess the value that that finger holds, and like the index finger is fear, and then the middle finger is
Oh,
anger,
yeah.
and
I
so
have
you
heard
can,
that.
yeah, so you can do different holds, and if you hold your finger with your opposite hand and then breathe into it, you can start to feel your pulse, and then you're just focusing on that pulse and you're breathing at the same time, and so it helps with self-regulation in the area of fear.
Oh my gosh, I have heard of this and I'd forgotten about this and I would love that link.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, thank you. I could feel it like I was holding that just and you do, the pulse is rhythmic. So
Mhm.
that rhythm in itself is co-regulating
Yeah,
too.
it is. And it's something, it's to me, it was mind blowing when I first tried it because our pulse is always with us. I mean, for me, I my pulse wasn't really apparent unless I was having anxiety or like an anxiety
Hmm.
attack. And so like, feeling my pulse really heavily like up by my ears and my throat, like in my
Yeah.
chest. And then being able to apply something more positive to where I feel like I'm becoming in sync with my body and with my breathing, and the pulse was a really powerful tool for me to learn. And it's something that I can do instead of like I fidget or picking. I'm able
Hmm.
to help myself self-regulate by like just holding my finger even like under a table or under a desk. So I really enjoy using that.
Oh, thank you for the amazing ways you can apply that too. You know, that it doesn't have to be just like out here like this, that
Mhm.
you can, you can be subtle and nuanced about it as well. I love that. And those are the type of practices Dr. Tara Swart and Dr. Jim Doty and Dan Siegel. Dan was really ahead of his time with in his discipline of interpersonal neurobiology. I think he was a little skeptical at first to talk about, the mind-body connection, but there's been so much robust research in this area, and we know that, our bodies are really conversing with us all day long. But many of us have tuned out, except for our little ones. And our early childhood students still listen to their bodies, but soon they get conditioned out of it. So our little, like Miles, my 2.5-year-old grandson, knows exactly what he can tell you what he's feeling in his tummy, in his mouth, on his toe. And then when he's overwhelmed, he will tell me or tell Sarah or tell Pop Pop. He will say pause, Pop Pop, just like he knows. And so Sarah's told him, like in his 2.5-year-old way, you can say pause. And that tells people to give you space. And that's really important, so yeah. Thank you for sharing that again. All right, any other questions before we delve into this last little part? Um, I want to begin with focused attention practices. And so before I go into some of the new research, but focused attention practices are a part of our procedures. And I'm just going to pull up here. They did not attach to this slide. So I'm going to show you this. When I coined this term, um, about 15 years ago, let me share my screen here. Um, okay, so I'm going to pull back up here a little bit so you can, there we go. We'll start here. Slideshow from current slide. Okay, so the acronym is right there, capital F, little O, capital A, capital P. And a, fo a focused attention practice, I was so not liking the term mindfulness at all because I felt like in the academic world, people weren't taking this practice serious. They thought it was, quote, woo-woo. So I was in my first course release in a fifth grade classroom in Indianapolis, and I sat with my fifth grade team and our principal, and I said, what do you think about calling these practices focused attention practices? Because that's what they are. They are practices that either energize us or they steady us. And that's why you see an S right here, not calm. I don't like the word calm, but you'll see an S for steady, and then there'll be an E on each card. These are on my website for energizing. And a focused attention practice basically can lower our heart rate, lower our blood pressure, lower our respiration, and get us to the cortex. If we need one to energize, it can begin to energize and bring, a little adrenaline to the nervous system to wake us up and to create a nervous system state of focused alertness. So these cards are on my website, and I'll show you some examples in just a minute. But the 90-second pause is where like we can begin to build focused attention practices in. And when we are, let me just start at the top here. If I get activated and I have an immediate reaction, there's usually an unfavorable outcome. But if I am using 90 seconds to pause, the body and the brain rinse clean and clear of negative emotion in 90 seconds if we allow them to. So when we use those, we can hum for 90 seconds. We can do some breathing, it's called horse lip breathing, while walking fast for 90 seconds. You could do what you just shared, the Japanese technique of finger holding for 90 seconds. We can tap for 90 seconds. We can draw or color or journal for 90 seconds. We can do paper tearing for 90 seconds. These focused attention practices are built into our procedures. And here is how we use them. I always explain to adults why we're doing this. We're trying to get to the cortex. We're trying to wake up the nervous system. We're trying to kind of just bring us back into focus. We're making sure that we are dumping and that we're ready to learn. And then we always give kids a choice. No one has to do it. And that's where you can get into unwanted power struggles. And I'll say to my kids, I don't make a big deal out of it. Like, if you don't want to join us, just close your eyes or go to sleep for 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Or just read some kids are reading a book, if you want to just read. I mean, I don't really make a deal because then it, becomes a power struggle. And then we always ask for feedback. and then we gradually build on the length of time. And I'll model one for you in just a moment. But when you might start out with kids, you wouldn't ever start out with 90 seconds because that's too long. So we might start out with 10 seconds. Let's take 3 deep breaths. Breathe in our favorite color, and we breathe out a worry. So we'll breathe in our favorite 3 colors. Breathe in another color. Feel that color just kind of waving all the way down from our head to our toes, and then we breathe out something that we don't want, a worry or something we're angry about. And then we gradually build on time. One of the research pieces that's really important to know about this, because if we are not taking deep breaths, carbon dioxide builds up in the body, and carbon dioxide creates agitation in the body. So there is a breath called the physiological sigh. And actually, I see dogs do this all the time. Since I've been here now at their house for like 18 hours, 20 hours. Their dog has done this. Gyla has done this like 3 or 4 times, and we'll say, "Oh, Gyla, good girl, you just took a big physiological sigh," because Reagan knows what it is. But a big sigh is where I'm going to look at you for this one. So a big sigh is like when we start, like when we finish a good cry. Have you ever seen kids go like, or we do it, right? We do it. Or you've seen your dogs do this, like where they lay on their side and you'll see them go, but if you haven't, you will now because it's so, once you see it, so it's 2 fast in breaths. So it's, and then 1 long out breath, and it literally resets the nervous system. It is so healthy. And I didn't know this till yesterday. I always say crying is healthy because it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. But guess what's contained in tears? Cortisol. Cortisol is in your tears. And when you are crying, you are releasing cortisol. So I think that's fascinating. It's one of the healthiest things that we can do. So focused attention practices are a part of our procedures. We use them with the whole class. We can use them one-on-one with a student. We can do them in a small group. The kids start to lead them. On my website, there are like probably 400 or 500 of them free to you. There's a deck of cards that say 120 focused attention practices, and then there are just, you can see them, there's menus of focused attention. That there's one area on the website that says sensory and regulatory practices. Some of those are focused attention practices as well. So let's do one together. I'm going to model for you. So just sit up nice and tall, and oops, I'm going to move my screen back. And then this is also known as bilateral stimulation. And so it's called the butterfly hug. And our kids really like this one. So you can hook your thumbs and you can put your thumbs on your clavicle. And then these are your butterfly wings. And so you can just find your own rhythm. If you don't like this, you can tap your shoulders. This is a variation of this too. But we're doing bilateral. So I'm going to just quit talking here in a minute. And I just want you to take some deep in breaths, but extend and slow down your out breath. So find your rhythm with your wings. So just take a moment and breathe in that nice, full oxygen. I'm releasing today through my mouth, but nose breathing is the healthiest. But if you need a big exhale, you can do it through your mouth. One more deep, deep breath. And then just give yourself maybe a neck, maybe one more deep breath, and maybe just kind of give yourself like a head rotation, maybe a shoulder rotation, just kind of bringing your shoulders back. Take a couple more deep breaths, a stretch, a yawn. Yeah, just wherever you just feel some tension. And then would anyone like to unmute and just share in your feedback? Like, did that feel helpful? Did you feel your body just kind of lean into that, or would you have changed it in some way?
I definitely felt relaxed. I could feel myself kind of drifting.
Good, good. And that's what we want. Yeah. That one is really, that one would have an S with it. That butterfly hug is more steadying, like one we might do after recess, one we might do, if kids come in just collectively in fight flight or in that hyper vigilant, hyper arousal state. So, but lots of resources. And lots of times I'll be asked when I leave a school or district or organization, Lori, we love this work, but where do we start? And we start with these. And as administrators, we want to do this with staff. We want to start our PLCs. If we are not embodying this work, then how do we expect teachers to comfortably share this with kids? So we have to really practice this with repetition as adults. Do that like before staff meetings, before PLCs, before team meetings, before department meetings. This is how we begin to plant seeds where we are collectively speaking the same language and all of us are working very hard together to get to the cortex. Dr. Bruce Perry, Laura, you've heard him say this for years, get to the cortex, get to the cortex, get to the cortex. And that's what he's referring to. We've got to be able to prime the brain and the nervous system, dump and warm up the nervous system. You can say it any way you want to, but this is where we get deep learning and we see test scores go up and we see kids, just really not only like I'm mentioning academics because that's so important in schools, but we see kids feel better. We see them with a kind of a sense of agency that they hadn't had before, or a sense of autonomy. So, any questions about the focused attention practices? Oh, thank you, Mona, for putting those on from the website. Thank you. Also, I have a lot of articles from EduTopia on this. So if you Google Lori Desautels and just put Lori Desautels EduTopia, and then I don't know, I've written like 50 articles for them. I don't know, so many of them on focused attention practices as well. Back in the day, we called the energizing focused attention practices brain breaks, and I don't use that anymore because it's not accurate. It's not just about the brain. It's really about the whole nervous system. So, but you'll see brain breaks and focused attention practices on there too. All right, we're going to keep going because our time is going fast now. All right, just a little of the new research. And again, you're just getting a peek look at this, but wow, this has been eye-opening for me. So when we think about trauma, that is I think it's been overused, the word, and it's been misunderstood. And there are so many definitions of what it is out there. I think Dr. Peter Levine and Dr. Gabor Mate and Dr. Porges have some of the best explanations or definitions of trauma. But I also want to share some of this new research. And her name is, I'm not going to pronounce her last name correctly. She builds on the work of Dr. Albert Wong as well, but her name is Dr. Amy Apagian. And so let me just read this to you. Trauma is more about what happens inside of us because it leaves us powerless and feeling trapped. And so it's we can define trauma is when our sensory systems become overwhelmed. There's too much too fast, or there's too little for too long. And we're going to talk about that right now. So, all of us, we hold an instinctual trauma response. It is survival programming, and it consists of 5 purposeful steps that can unfold over seconds. So each of us has this in us. We call it survival programming, or an instinctual trauma response. And like those five constituents, those 5 steps happen like that. So let's talk about the first one. So the first part of the trauma response is called the startle. And we've all been startled. This is so common. The startle is a reflex reaction to a potential threat. So this determines whether a perceived threat is real and gives us a bolt of energy. The instant alertness comes from noradrenaline, a sister hormone to adrenaline. Noradrenaline is dispersed from the brainstem. So I'm just going to share with you right now. You can be startled when you are driving and you see a car coming your way and it's skidding across the road, or you can see or you hear brakes around you, but you don't know where they're coming from, or you're on a hike and you see something that looks very similar to a snake about 50 yards in front of you, but you're not sure what it is. So in a startle, your body is in a focused and highly alerted state to decide what feels threatening and what is a perceived threat. Does that make sense? So it's not a true trauma response, but it can be the first step of a trauma response. We get startled. You hear someone pounding on your door in the middle of the night. That startles you. You hear, but you don't yet, like we're not moving to action yet. So that's the first step. And I'm going to share my screen. So after this startle response, the second one is called the stress. And this is the step that is all about action. We take action now, which requires immediate energy, taking action to really meet the stress. Nervous system releases now adrenaline, which fuels this high energy state, much like pressing the accelerator of your car. And a stress response is like a sprint, high energy with high intensity, and it's short term. So let's say that car in a car accident is approaching, that we were startled, and now we see it coming toward us. So now I'm in the stress response and I grab the wheel and I turn my steering wheel and I start pumping the brake. That's a stress response. So you're taking action. Now, both of these steps you have not crossed the line into trauma yet. Both of these are still growth provoking steps because our body is mobilizing energy. So we're in fight flight, but we have not crossed that line of overwhelm. So then this third part of these 5 steps is called the wall. So here's a picture. So think about coming up against the wall. Now, it's not a survival strategy. It's that line of overwhelm, that tipping point that triggers the nervous system now into action. So let me describe it. The wall, unlike other steps, is not a survival strategy. It is the pivotal moment that triggers our body's shift to a different kind of protection. So now we move out of growth into, what's the word that they use? Into a true trauma response. So from the high energy state of stress, we hit the wall that renders us powerless. So the wall is what triggers the trauma response. And it is really the internal experience of being trapped and powerless in the face of an inescapable life threat. So this is where you hit a wall. I'm going to look at you again. and you're gonna hit the wall. So in your body at that point, that is where you cross overwhelm. And we're going to talk about what the body does when you hit the wall because you just have to really hang on for the ride. Now, we can hit an emotional wall. And many of us do this too. It's not always a physical threat. What about negative beliefs? What if somebody has triggered us and we hit the wall of a negative thought or a negative belief? So I'm going to give you some examples of this. So the walls we hit, let me go back here from this one. The walls we hit are not always visible. Negative self-beliefs, such as I'm not good enough, I cannot change it, I never can change anything, I can't get angry, I've hit this wall, I can't get angry because anger is not safe. So we don't speak up in self-defense. The wall leads to only one outcome, and that is we escalate into freeze, which is the first step of the trauma response. That's the true, we go from growth now into protection. So I'm going to share this with you. So now we move into freeze. This is tonic immobility that we just talked about, that blended state, which is kind of cool that we've got this, this trauma response. So this is our most powerful survival strategy. And this marks our entry into a true trauma response. But I love the reframing of this. And I can't wait to tell my daughter about this. This is so exciting to know that if you've had this horrible week and don't read it, I'm just going to talk now, I'm not reading from the slide. You've had a horrible week, you've collapsed on the couch, your heart is racing, you're stuck, you're frozen, but this is your strongest survival mechanism. To know that is empowering. So now I'm going to read this. I'm going to start here. This is our body's strongest survival mechanism, overpowering both adrenaline surges and logical thinking. It is here where we move from heroic action into strategic paralysis. Our muscles lock tightly, trapping all the energy from our previous stress response inside our body. We're quite literally scared stiff. The freeze is the transition step between the wall and shutdown. So what could create a freeze in your body? Maybe when you are at school or you are at the grocery store and you see people fighting or arguing and you see a conflict in front of you, maybe that triggers something in your developing years where maybe your parents were fighting or there was some type of an altercation and you could not stop it. Maybe you become paralyzed because remember, you can become emotionally paralyzed, not just physically paralyzed. Maybe there was a conflict at work in the past, or you're pulling up an evaluation that you had that didn't go well, or there was an announcement that triggered you. Sometimes being called out, like our kids move into tonic immobility when they're called out, they're in the spotlight for something negative, or something positive, but it draws the attention on them, usually negative. It could be a past unwelcoming sexual experience. So when you think about that, we cannot live here, so this response leads to shutdown. Now, it doesn't always lead to shutdown, and we sometimes don't even have to enter this state if we've anchored ourselves and we've resourced our nervous system. And that's why the practices of awareness and the ones we talked about in this first hour are so critical. So this is saying that, yep, you'll go through these 5 steps if you are unable to resource your nervous system or to anchor yourself, or you've not practiced getting out in front of challenging situations before this trauma happens. Now, a car accident would be a little bit different because you'll hit the wall where the car is going to be crashing into you. And then you move into kind of that that frozen, and then that shutdown with maybe some injury, but we'll talk about that. So freeze is this blended state of fight, flight, and shutdown. And we've all been there. Now, I want to speak to shutdown. In the blue, this is a brainstem response. This is when we move into shutdown. This is where we truly are disconnecting from the world and disconnecting from those around us. So let me read this to you. The survival strategy of shutdown is clear. This is what our nervous systems are saying. Don't die, but stay barely alive. This is our trauma response to an experience that feels overwhelming, unbelievable, and unbearable. When trapped and powerless, and this is amazing, listen to this. When our bodies are trapped and feel powerless, our bodies operate on ancient wisdom. And I'm going to give you the reasoning behind that wisdom. Maybe if we play dead, the threat will go away because mammals do this. The predator would much rather have a fight than to see a limp prey. I mean, it would much rather attack something alive and aggressive. Okay, so, and this is true like for people. So this is, I mean, think about this. Maybe if we play dead, the threat will go away. Also, there is a smell that is associated with dissociation. I don't know enough about this yet, but it's not interesting to the predator. When we move into this shutdown, like that's another reason for that shutdown. What happens in shutdown is remarkable with three mechanisms at play. So these are the three mechanisms. Dissociation is a part of shutdown, immobilization, and energy conservation. And all of these create emotional and mental distance from sensations that feel unbearable to us, which I just think that's amazing. So if I am disassociating, then I don't have to be overwhelmed by emotions that are too much. So I dissociate, it's the wisdom of distance. I'm going to talk about each of these. So, and I'm going to go back to this, our breath in just a minute, but I want to show you this. So when we cross the wall or that critical line of overwhelm, that's unique to each of us, right? Everybody has a line. That's our unique, precise point where growth turns into overwhelm, where challenges become too much, and when stress transforms into trauma. So think about your muscles. Like if you go to the gym and you work out and you're building up the amount of weight that you're lifting, but one morning you go in there, maybe you haven't stretched enough, or maybe you've added 5 pounds too much, and all of a sudden there's a tear in the muscle. So every tissue has its breaking point, and that's what we're saying. Like each of us has our unique line of overwhelm. That line determines what grows us and what breaks us. Stress energizes us and trauma depletes us. The startle and stress responses occur on the growth side of the line when we still have the capacity to respond effectively. When we hit the wall and experience powerlessness, we cross the critical line of overwhelm into the freeze and shutdown. So this is just kind of an overview of what I've just shared with you. I didn't read the top one. Trauma is not the event that happens to us. It is what happens inside of us when we feel trapped and powerless and alone. And I want to say that. So let's talk about what trauma is. Sometimes it's too much, too fast. That means our sensory systems are overwhelmed because information is coming in too much, too fast. And I talked about this in August. It could be a car accident. It could be the loss of several people in your family or friends over a short period of time. It could be a natural disaster. It could be a loss of job. Any sudden jolt to our experiences, environments, and relationships, it just hits us and it's unpredictable. And and it's overwhelming. So our bodies become flooded with emotions and sensations and memories that we have not had time to process or metabolize. We haven't had time to digest them. So they get lodged, they get stuck in the nervous system. But sometimes the trauma is too long or too little. So, how many of you have gone through a time in your life maybe where you've had these aches or pains, or you've had this chronic fatigue and you've ignored it, or you've repressed it, or you've pushed it away, and finally it just comes to a head? So, maybe we've not listened to our nervous systems, and maybe we haven't known how. Something that our children and youth experience that's an example of this is neglect in their homes, in their environments. Neglect is 75 to 80% of DCS calls, and this is when the brain is not getting the directions and instructions it needs to develop. This is developmental trauma. And it leaves no visible scars on the body. And it generally occurs well before the nervous system has developed the capacity to remember the events or to put them in a story. It is body memory, implicit memory that is recorded. Or we can have a combination of too much, too fast, too long, or too little. So this work in applied educational neuroscience framework is to become our body's expert. And we become our own body's expert. And I just put nervous system journal in there just because it's really important for us just to begin to draw or to write down and to track, the times where we can get activated and triggered, our typical reactions. Those are some of the things that we can do. This is the most beautiful part of this work, and I recorded a video about this. Our shutdown has so much wisdom. And this is so hopeful for me because I worry about children and adolescents in shutdown. They are often absent from school a lot. They have failing grades. They disappear. They are not engaged in work. But shutdown contains these three constituents, and this is the wisdom of our bodies. When we become immobilized, that is the wisdom of stillness. Our body knows to be still because if we move, we may not have enough energy for later. If we become still, then we might have a better chance of surviving. Our body also holds the wisdom of distance, which is dissociation. And our bodies also hold the wisdom of powering down, which is known as energy conservation. And I actually watched my mom in all three of these in the several hours that she was transitioning, she was dying. I think, I really want to talk to hospice about this. But I think as we transition, we become still and we begin to become distant. I saw my dad do this as well. And we begin to power down. So I want to explain what happens in each of these. So in dissociation, we mentally move away. And we're physically powerless. We actually we can't move our bodies. We can't, dissociation is where, we're like our bodies are overwhelmed. It creates distance from what would otherwise be too overwhelming to bear. It helps us to stop caring for things we can't control. And think of dissociation as a circuit breaker, but an emotional circuit breaker. It cuts off our presence to protect us from emotional overwhelm. And what does it look or feel like? Time might slow down. There's a dreamlike quality to our presence. There might be numbness or distant emotions. It just feels like we're leaving the world, leaving ourselves. And this is when our memories of those events can become fragmented, like we don't remember. If something traumatic happened to us and we were in dissociation, we've lost the concrete memory, the conceptual memory. And then there's the wisdom, amazing wisdom of stillness. So when we're still, we have a better chance of surviving. Um, we can avoid drawing attention to ourselves in moments of danger, but we can also become emotionally like stuck with emotional paralysis. And that emotional paralysis creates tension and trauma, and it gets stuck in the body because what happened to us, we never really created a story for it, and we never really made sense of it, and we never really completed that arousal cycle. So I'm using kind of my own words there. And the last one that I want to speak to is the wisdom of energy conservation or powering down. So this is where the body surrenders to survive because we might need the energy for later. And the reason that the body knows to do this is because our cells go into a survival mode and they begin not to be able to release toxins and to take in nutrients. This is interesting with our bodies in this kind of powering down. They begin to produce less heat, and we are harder to detect as mammals. So mammals will do this in the wild because that's another reason they do that, is that they're not, that's what I mean to the predator. They're not as active and alive, also because they have less heat in the body. So they become cold and heavy and numb. Powering down helps us to survive what we cannot power through. And energy conservation is misunderstood as laziness, depression, or lack of motivation. So these mean everything for us in schools. What does dissociation look like in our students and in us? We can be zoning out on our phones or just watching Netflix and not even really just moving through the motions. Sleeping is dissociation. Like I'm talking about sleeping all the time or just sleeping when it feels too much. Avoiding responsibilities or tasks can be dissociating, mind wandering during conversations, excessive daydreaming. And then what does immobilization look like? You know, that maybe it looks like you just can't start a project or a task. Maybe it's like procrastination, sitting or lying down for long periods of time. This is so good to know because these are survival mechanisms. These aren't signs of weakness, but evidence from our bodies that the body has felt powerless and needs us to help it to repair, to regain a sense of agency and safety. We need to become our own parent. Powering down can look too like excessive sleeping, foggy like focus with a feeling of heaviness, little movement, or little to no conversation, no talking. Again, kind of limpness, heaviness. And then this is a good thing because by slowing down, the body tries to increase its chances of survival by minimizing movement and energy expenditure. So this is the best news. And I know that was a lot, and this is going to be a part of, let me stop sharing. This is going to be a part of MTSS. Did I overwhelm all of you? Was that too much, too fast, too soon? Or are you okay? I mean, it's really hopeful. I hope you feel that way because before this research, we just said, I would say in presentations, I really worry about the kids who are failing school, who are disappearing, who are, high absences. I mean, who are vaping, like they're shutting down. And we didn't understand or share with our kids the wisdom of their bodies. Our kids need to know that your body knows how to care for you. No wonder you're under your desk. Now we got to find ways. So we've got to acknowledge it first. We have to validate the nervous system. And then we begin to plan with our students how we take little tiny steps. How we begin to validate first, notice things that are going right and well, providing them anchors and resourcing their nervous systems, even in good moments, so that they can access those during a challenge. It's one, like if you're not using your anchors every day, you're not going to be able to access those when you're in a shutdown. Does that make sense? We have said to our kids, you got to use patterned repetition because that's how we become good at something. Anything we do with patterned repetition and intention, we get good at. But the brain is and the nervous system, even though it has plasticity, it loves and thrives on what's familiar and predictable. So, and it can feel very, very, the reason that most of us don't keep up with our New Year's resolutions has nothing to do with willpower. It has to do with that our new practice or our new way of being feels threatening to the brain. So the brain will push back and it'll push back hard in trying to create the familiar again. That's the struggle. That's the challenge. Yeah. So you are the first group that I've shared this new research with. And it's just going to keep growing. But today is about awareness of our nervous system, awareness of the children and youth that we serve, and then knowing about the plasticity and knowing that when we're using focused attention practices, we can get out in front of our own behaviors. We can meet that tonic and mobility with a focused attention practice, with movement, with breath, so that we don't go into the full shutdown. So I just don't want you to think that, oh my gosh, these are the 5 steps and it's going to happen to me no matter what. Like, that's not how that works. We can disrupt that trauma response when we are using embodied awareness. Yep, I say that again. We can disrupt. We can be disruptors of our own trauma responses with embodied awareness. So that's all I have today, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or any feedback or thoughts. I'm so glad we recorded this because you can listen to this several times. And know that this is going to continue to grow. You're seeing an evolution of this work right now.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lori, for sharing some of your primary research. Like we're part of your circle of getting some
Oh, you
information.
really are
So
today.
thank you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
again, it sounds like
you
we're
are.
welcome to ask questions in the chat. You're welcome to unmute and share in that way. I'm also going to put a quick little survey into the chat as well, just to complete before we leave. But by no means am I telling you that it's time's up. You're welcome to just continue to engage in the content or
I
conversation,
do.
rather.
Yeah, and I do want to say, and I appreciate some of the comments in the chart. This can be triggering for us. So really care for yourself. I mean, we all have experienced trauma. There's no such thing as somebody not having an ACE, an adverse childhood experience. I mean, you can't be on this earth without trauma. Some of us have had a lot more. Some of us have had more developmental trauma. So, I mean, it is a part of who we are, but this work can be very activating to our nervous systems. So just be very gentle with yourself. And to know, I just wanted today for you to share with your colleagues and with the students that, I mean, we don't share this with little ones, but we tell the kids that their bodies are just brilliant. That's why the name of the new manual is Body and Brain Brilliance, because of the wisdom that our bodies hold. And you just don't have to be who you were yesterday. And you don't have to be who you were this morning or 10 minutes ago. And when you are intentional with these practices and you use them with patterned repetition, your biology changes. The way you feel changes. Well, please connect with me if you haven't already on social media. I think you'll enjoy like Facebook. I can share with you right now. I'll give you you can take a screenshot. I use that really to stay connected with all of you. And I will pull that up. Here it is. And let me share my screen. Here we go. So you can connect with me on Twitter or X, my Facebook, um, Revelations in Education, um, Instagram, LinkedIn. I mean, just everywhere. I just post. There's my website, Revelations in Education, but I think Mona put that in the chat for you. And my Butler email is there, so feel free to take a screenshot of this. And yeah, it was just so fun to share with all of you today.
Dr. Lori, can I share something with you that happened? So I was at the day in August, and so I've been working some focused attention practices. I teach high school, and I have a class of juniors and seniors. And one of those lovely young students brought a snake to school last week in his pocket, a very small snake. And I found myself instantly deregulated when I saw it, and I was almost panicky, and I was starting to get really angry. And one of my students in the classroom said to me, Ms. Calendar, you need to take a couple of breaths, breathe with me. And so the whole class, because we've started to do these things and they've picked up on it, and they saw me get deregulated, and they said, it's okay, let's breathe for a second. And I was able to take some breaths because they breathed with me. They were my anchor in that moment. And then I was able to handle the situation without anger. But it was just really, sometimes we implement these things in our classrooms and it's new to the kids, it's especially these older kids. And sometimes they think, oh, it's woo-woo stuff, and sometimes they push back. But it was really, really beautiful for me to see that they are remembering it and they're internalizing it and they're actually using these strategies themselves. So it was really cool.
Wow.
And it was thanks to the time that I'm spending here.
Oh, Laura, thank you so much for sharing that. And you bring up such a great point. And I want to say this too. Our kids love, they are learning this with you. Never feel like you don't know enough to teach this. This is a touch point. As a parent, as a caregiver, as an administrator, when you are sharing that, hey, you know what? I have been learning this. There's a lot of research behind it, and this is something that we can do together. It really is a collective touch point. So you don't have to be the expert at all. Well, thank you all so much. You have the recording, you got the website, stay connected with me, and we'll be together one more time. And I'll really focus in then on more of the MTSS for adults. We'll do some of the practices and we'll look at discipline too. The reason we're focusing on the adults is because we build engagement and we really begin to shift how we use discipline in our homes and in our communities and schools when we are focusing on us. It's anything but selfish.
And I promise
Yeah.
I'll send out an email soon. So keep those nervous systems regulated. Try to get it out
Yeah.
to you. I can't promise the end of this week, but early next week with all the resources so you have them.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mona. Thank you all. Thank you for the thank yous. That's great. And yeah, have a great fall, and we will see each other the next time this year. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.